Hello, everyone. This is Leslie uh, from Buddhist Mahavira's Facebook page. We are going live this evening, and we have a very distinguished and erudite speaker. And I'm very glad and happy that this Reverend has uh, graciously accepted our invitation to speak tonight. And I'm really happy for this. And I would now like to bring on Reverend Dato Dr. Sumana Siri Nayaka Thera as our guest this evening to speak on a new subject, a very interesting subject, which I will bring on later for you. A very good evening, Pante. Sorry, Reverend Dato
Good
Sumana.
evening. Yes. Good evening and happy Vesak to
Happy Vesak to
everybody.
you. Happy Vesak to you too. Okay, it's good that we managed to catch you before you fly off. I know you're going off to Pakistan. I was told, but lucky we caught you before you left. But before we go any further, let me read a profile of our Reverend Dato Dr. Sumanesri Naika Mahathira, and before we start the evening's Dhamma sharing. Um, Reverend Dato Dr. Sumanesri Sri Naika Mahathira was born in Malacca to Singaporean parents of Sri Lankan origin. He was raised and educated in Singapore. He was ordained as a novice monk at the age of 11 under the chief monk Venerable M. Sumana Mahathera of the Sri Lanka Ramya Temple at St. Michael's Road, Singapore. He then went to Sri Lanka and attended the Buddhist Seminary Bhikkhu Training Center in Colombo from 1965 to 1970. He then obtained a diploma in Buddhist studies from the University of Kelaniya in 1975 and a BA honors in Buddhist and Western philosophy in 1979. He also earned degrees in homeopathy and naturopathy medicine from the UK and from the US. He read law at the University of London from 1992 to 1994, enriching his knowledge in criminal and civil matters. He then enrolled at the University of Oxford and became the first Buddhist at the prestigious Faculty of Theology and earned a postgraduate in Applied Christian Theology. Dr. Sumaneshwari can speak Sanskrit, Sinhala, Pali, Malay, English, Hokkien, German, French, and Hindi, and understands 17 languages. In 2007, the Amarapura sect in Sri Lanka appointed him the chief Buddhist monk of the UK and Europe, and in 2013, they appointed him again chief Buddhist monk of Malaysia and Singapore. He was also the first non-Indian citizen to receive the Glory of India Award, whose other recipients include Mother Teresa and Shah Rukh Khan. In 2014, Dr. Sumaneswari was awarded a Datoship, a DSPN, Darjah Setia Pangkuan Negeri, from the governor of Penang. He also celebrated 50 years of monkhood in 2014. In 2018, he became a board member of the Asian think tank called the Asian Dialogue Society. Then in 2019, he was appointed to be an international academic member at the Faculty of Social Science University of Peshawar in Pakistan. Last year, in 2019, he initiated the first official Vesak celebrations in Pakistan, graced by the PM Imran Khan Special Minister, who was the chief guest, along with open-minded Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, and a large number of Pakistani scholars participating. Dr. Somaneswari advises that one should live honestly, think of fellow beings instead of being selfish, as good thoughts and good actions can change one's body diversity and keeps us healthy without worry about the future. His philosophy in life is to live from day to day, moment to moment. Life is not all about suffering. One needs to transcend suffering to attain happiness. Buddhism is the happiness agenda. That was the profile of Reverend Dr. Sumaneswari. And now you like to listen to the man himself. So, Dr. Sumaneswari, would you like to take center stage? And I'd like to invite you to start the sermon. Reverend sir.
Good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. To be relevant to my theme, the Buddha himself said of himself and the Dhamma and the Sangha that happy is the birth of the Buddhas. Happy is the preaching of the Dhamma. Happy is the unity of the community. Happy is the practice of the united ones. So about happiness, that much things he had to say on this Vesak Day to us as a great message. Turning back 55 years ago, when I became a monk, I did give a 1 hour sermon at the age of 11. So by today, having preached and given lectures in 66 countries at the age of 67, I am, if I may say, the happiest living monk in the world. Thinking universally, as you mentioned, I speak more than 10 languages, and wherever it is needed, I use the lingual capacity to transmit the message that I want. Buddhism is not a negative teaching about suffering. In fact, it tells us how to get rid of suffering, which means transform suffering to happiness. This is what Gautama Buddha attained finally by transforming suffering to happiness, especially on a Vesak day where he became the fully enlightened one. It was an ordinary person like any other prince. He enjoyed life, but he transformed from the ordinary to become an extraordinary person, not a god, not a divine being, a life-enjoying prince transformed into the knowledgeable, enlightened one. Buddhism is a human-based, anthropocentric religion. It is not a God-based, theocentric religion. This makes a lot of differences with many other God-based religions. But we are not against people who believe in their belief. Let them believe what they believe. We believe in what we believe. Albert Einstein is often quoted with this statement: the religion of the future will be a cosmic religion. It should transcend a personal God and avoid dogma and theology. Covering both the natural and the spiritual, it should be based on a religion arising from the experience of all things natural and spiritual as a meaningful entity. He says, Buddhism answers this description. If there is any religion that could cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism. Einstein concludes like this. For us, science is a means to an end only, not the final end itself. Every saying that it has and search that it has found, they say, this is what we know so far. But in the case of the Buddha, it is different. The Buddha says, done is what to be done, no more else left to be done. He gives us a conclusive understanding of the goal that we want to reach fully. Science follows the five senses. It comprehends mostly the physical and the material. Buddhism goes higher. It is called a para-scientific religion. What classical science cannot answer, quantum science may be able to come closer to such experience. Einstein saw this in his later works. Buddha's science has three main realities. This is my main thrust today, and the first reality of change is the theme of my topic. Buddhism is not information, it is transformation. Because by information today, more than any other time in history, we have a lot of fake news. So therefore, we must get the right information and transform that information into a transformation that we become better as individuals and a good society. The first reality is that everything changes. You normally say impermanent. Just use a simple word. Everything changes. The second, everything causes dissatisfaction because it changes. The third, when such is the case, if it changes, there is no fixed eternal entity or characteristics in that such thing. That being so, my theme today being change, transformation, I want to talk to you that even when you have economic problems, you need not worry. Many people today, at this present moment, a good number of countries in the world globally are suffering by economic disasters. We can come up. What comes up has to go down. What goes down can come up. So if we understand this norm and accept that this is the law of nature of action and reaction, we shouldn't be over worried. We can be cautious. We should be aware. That is okay. But being or overdoing the whole thing and creating a problem to oneself is not a good creative action. No creative intelligence in that. So therefore, we can do many good things by changing the policies that we have to make a better situation in our lives, in our individual life, in our social life, and also for our own country. Even Corona will change, like SARS. Nothing is there which is permanent. That is the first Buddhist reality. Science and technology will do their job. Don't over worry. So I have put up, instead of coronavirus, we Buddhists have Karuna Viharas. Vihara means living. We call it temple now. But Vihara means actually living. Brahma Vihara, noble living, creative living, sublime living. So Karuna means compassion. If we have compassionate living, we can come out from this entire problem to a large extent, spiritually, psychologically, and psychically. And this will play an impact, according to New Era theory, in our mind and body coordination. The world is nothing but what the individual do and he achieve or he loses. So therefore, it is good to take care of the individual and not to neglect them and leave it only to the authorities involved in medical science and technology. As the Buddha said, there is nothing independent in this world. Everything is interdependent. One thing depends on the other. Suffering transformed to happiness. So we have four types of sublime livings in Buddhism. One, compassion, karuna. So instead of corona virus, we have karuna viharas. And then the next one, metta, loving kindness, which is a very common term many of you use. In Chinese, zi, ai, zi, pei, they are considered very distinctive two, which are very connected emotionally to ourselves. And then the next one, altruistic joy, mudita, not to be jealous in others' prosperity. And the fourth one, we normally translate as equanimity, to think in a very balanced way, a balanced serenity for the happiness of oneself and others, or in thinking of terms of equality of life. Compassion means karuna, a strong feeling that one has. Com and passion, passione in Italian or Latin means a very strong feeling combined together. When you see somebody's pain, like those who are suffering from this pandemic and those who have the fear, more than those who are suffering, the problem is many have the fear which causes unnecessary imbalances in their life. So we have to be careful and be more aware. The keyword awareness is very crucial at this stage of time. If we understand the three realities, we cling to nothing. And we can become more understanding, wise and compassionate, like how the Buddha did. The Dhamma is happiness. It is the agenda to happiness. Be united meaningfully, not just ritually, superficially. What is important is the actual, not the ritual. If we use a ritual, it has to be transformed to the actual, not a traditionalist. A mere traditionalist can be disaster, but good traditions we can adopt, we can transform. We have been advised not to go to the extremes by the Buddha, whether it is for pleasure or whether it is for torture, whether it is for pain or whether it is for pleasure. Be in the middle, follow the middle path, be a midlist, that's how I call it. The Four Noble Livings, as we just mentioned for now, are the qualities which the Hindus believe that Brahma, the creator, also has. The Buddha brings in transformation. He says, parents are your creators. After all, biologically it's quite true, isn't it? And the parents, the Buddha says, have these qualities latent and dormant in them. In some and many, it is prominent, you can see. But there are, of course, exceptions to the rule, differences also in certain parents. The Buddha Sasana, dispensation, mission or ministry is called Karuna Sasana, the religion of compassion. The Buddha is called Maha, the great compassionate one. His form of transformation is like this. In a very beautiful, eternal, and everlasting and universal way, he mentioned, conquer the angry man, the one who has hatred, or the terrorist by love. Conquer the bad person by goodness, by doing good. Conquer the miser or the greedy person by being generous. Conquer the liar by truth. These eternal truths and values he has put in very aptly so that society can be well and happy. We can have not just happiness but wellness in our physical being as well. Now, this is the basic meaning of change. If you dislike the word change, then transform. Sometimes people are used to status quo, they like always the easy way. They find it difficult to accept change. Change for the better. Don't change for the worse. There's nothing wrong. The Buddha learned from the Brahmins and he reformed, he changed and made a new religion as such. So did the others. Even in the case of Jesus, he was, as I see from a theological point of view, a reformist theologian of the Neo-Judaism. That is what Jesus taught. Jesus was not a Christian, actually. He was a Jewish of a minority race. Now, in the case of the Buddha, this reality that everything changed is so interesting. It has a great power. The power of change you can understand when you change yourself for the better. As the great painter Claude Monet, who was influenced by Buddhism, he says, to change, everything changes. Ankh pierre, even pebbles, stones can be changed. It's very interesting how artists in the Western world have been influenced by the great teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha's qualities are 9, and out of them, there is a particular one called taming the untamed people or animals. This is physically and mentally by his wisdom and by his relevant tact. For example, how he tamed Alavaka the demon, how he tamed Angulimala the criminal, how he tamed young Sopaka who became enlightened, who was tied into the tomb in a cemetery by the foster mother or stepmother, as you normally say. And how Nalagiri, the drunken elephant who came to crush him, was subdued. How Devadatta, his brother-in-law turned enemy, who attempted murder of the very Buddha several times, and upon his death at the doorsteps of the Buddha's temple in Sravasti in India, Jetavanarama, the Buddha made a reconciliation very well. He said, just before his death, Devadatta came with 500 followers. And in future time, he will be born as a private Buddha, though now he went to hell. There is no forever condemnation in Buddhism. There is no eternal hell in Buddhism. You can always, because of your good actions, come and reap the harvest. It is the law of nature. Naturalization is wisdomization. So Buddhism spread to neighboring Iran from India, the neighboring country at that time. There was no Pakistan. It was called Persia. In Iranian language, if they call something beautiful, they always use the word Buddh. Look at the Buddha statue. Buddh means beautiful in Persian language. The beauty of the Buddha was such that in fine arts you may see them in museums of Pakistan, which I saw in 15 museums, about 18,000 Buddha statues and Buddhist artifacts, well done in fine arts, in the Hellenistic art. The Buddha taught us the art of transformation, of noble living, and he himself transformed into a beautiful piece of art. This was one reason that Buddhism spread in some areas of Asia. His teaching is for the here and now, not just for the next life, not just for Nibbana, to be happy and well here and now. How can you be happy there and later if you are not happy here and now? Buddhism is not a mere positive but a realistic religion which accepts things as they really are, not as they appear to be, not because they seem to be so, not because one agrees with one's choice or opinion, not by ritual, not out of respect to the master or teacher or monk. Question whether the Buddha is enlightened or not fully is also given us by the Buddha himself in the Majjhima Nikaya Vimamsaka Sutta to question that. This is something unexpected in many other religions. Life is an award. Life is a reward to develop for higher happiness. There is suffering. We acknowledge suffering, but Buddhism is not a religion of teaching of suffering and suffering only. It tells us, get rid of it. That is the meaning of the second noble truth, which is normally translated as the cessation of suffering. Very technical. The stopping of suffering. What is the stopping of suffering? Happiness. Why don't we say the noble truth of happiness? Don't stick to the word. Look at the underlying meaning as well. That is where you find the transformation coming in. Such transformation comes in us because Buddhism is not an antisocial religion. It is for society and the human being. It answers the human predicament and improves the entire system of the human being and society. There is a vast system of socially living happily teachings in the entire Buddhist texts. And how one can be happy in the world system before one attains Nibbana. Nibbana is not instant like instant noodles or instant coffee. You need time. Time is a great healer. It comes instantly if you are very seriously involved as you practice. Buddhism is not an escapism to jungles and mountains. Buddhism doesn't retreat, though this term is used traditionally by many other people. Retreat means to run away. So Buddhism is not an escapism. It is to face the situation, accept and manage the crisis and live happily. You may fail one time, but you may succeed 2-3 times more. And Nibbana is not out somewhere in the sky. It's beyond space and time. It is in this 1 fathom long body that you can find the entire transformation and get to that point of stopping of suffering and getting that abundant happiness which is called the highest happiness. Nibbanang Paramang Sukham. The 3 realities of life are to be understood by right understanding, samadhi. Buddhism doesn't begin with right meditation or right belief. It starts with right understanding, having the comprehension, knowing to understand how things as they really are. You need to practice it, you need to realize it, you need to experience it. That is why great scientists like Kuchenberg, the Buddhist scientist of chemistry, he said, Buddhism is an empirical science. This is a chemist, scientist in chemistry who had 22 patents, and he was a staunch Buddhist in his writing. Recently, Vladimir Putin, the dictator of Russia, came up with a very interesting statement. You might wonder why we want to quote a Russian dictator's statement. He said, Buddhism is not a religion. This is said in all communist countries very clearly. And also many of us know it is not a mere religion. There are religious aspects. And he goes on to say, it's a philosophy which gives ideal solutions to our day-to-day life's desperate questions. Imagine coming from Putin, this statement. He further said, so being a Buddhist is a privilege. And he mentions, be proud of being a Buddhist. In one of the situations when he went to India, he mentioned like this. Not just because you are born to a Buddhist family. You need to follow the Dhamma, the practices, and experience yourself the teaching without any blind belief. So the Buddha said, no creator God, but for creative high living, including this karuna, metta karuna, loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. In this world of information technology, therefore, Buddhism is transformation technology. In that transformation technology, you will see that how much in information technology things are not correct. Say for instance, this computer in front of me, it has everything, but the computer cannot be enlightened. It has the teachings also of every religion. It cannot be fully enlightened at all. The tendency in mere belief is to become blind. If we transform our energies for the good, then there will be happiness instead of suffering. Do not stick to the letter of the word, as I said. Try to find the underlying meaning. As Gandhi said, if you want the world to change, change yourself first. So the power of transformation, of changing the world, comes when one changes oneself first. Said Sun Tzu, if you know your enemy and know yourself better, you will win 1,000 victories in 100 battles. Buddha transforms that. He says, it is better to win oneself rather than winning 1,000 wars. How wonderful. There is no way a Buddhist can support a war. Non-killing, non-violence is the first principle of the Buddhist principles or precepts. People pray to the goddess of mercy. That mercy is also called compassion. Just praying is not enough. Practice that. We must show by our example of loving kindness, compassion, not simply by praying and following the rituals only. If you take virus, we can understand. If you are not in the middle, if you go to the extreme, whether it is the extreme of racism or whether the extreme of religion, racism is also a virus. It can be worse than coronavirus. So is religious extremism. Be in the middle. Try to balance yourself. That is what the middle way means. Doctors go on strike, but they have taken the Hippocratic oath, primum non ucere. The first principle do not do harm. So patients die when the doctors don't tend to it. So it is very incumbent that the professionals perform their duties. At this point of time, we understand that how coronavirus have made us realize that we are all living in a borderless world, that everything is universal. It doesn't care who you are. Corona means crown actually in Italian language. So instead of coronavirus, I stress again, we have Karuna Viharas, transforming from bad to good. He himself transformed into a beautiful, the Buddha. So we go on to explain that how we can be at ease and at peace by bringing in that necessary transformation. The tendency in mere belief is to make us blind. So we got to be very careful that we can come out from that and become well and happy. Brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, I think I have taken up my time to the extent that I have been told, and I wish you in these harsh times of crisis that you manage it well and understand how to transform yourself and change from the difficulties and the pain to come to understand the right process of transformation. While I wish all of you a happy Vesak, we look forward to our next Vesak that we could celebrate with pomp and joy. Thank you very much. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Reverend Sumana Siri. That was a wonderful sharing. I think there was a lot of good comments for you on Facebook. There's one question. I would like to throw that question onto the screen for you. Can you read it? I think it's more
Yes,
like a
yes.
statement. Not, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes, he's been very thankful and he's looking at economic problem is nothing, even there could be joy at times. It's true. We have countries which have had economic prosperity and become the first world, but now with this corona, it has taken a different uh, twist. So nothing is permanent. This is an eternal truth that we have to face. Don't be proud when you are rich. Don't lose courage when you are in a crisis. That is the ancient Indian wisdom.
Are there any other questions before we end tonight? I don't see anything at the moment. There's a comment. I think this is from one of the monks. It's some praise.
Yes, wish me to be well and happy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it came from one of the monks actually. So I think that's one. Let's see. There's another one here.
Yes, the first form of transformation he's asking is to understand that everything changes and what changes brings dissatisfaction or suffering. And don't cling to that and accept that this is the law of nature that all of us have to face. But it doesn't mean we have to suffer forever. We have the ability, the rationality to bring up the logical answers we want and use our morality to galvanize it properly and balance it properly. Thank you for that comment.
Okay, Bhante. So, Reverend sir, I think we have come to the end of this evening's sharing. It's about almost 40 minutes. Thank you so much for the time. So before we end, we would like to invite Dato Dr. Sumana Siri to transfer the marriage to all the dearly departed as well to all the devas before we end this evening's Dhamma sharing. Reverend sir, would you like to?
Yes. For those who have fear and for those who are suffering or somebody in the family circle suffering, and even those who are not affected directly or indirectly, who share that sorrow, who have that sympathy, who have that compassion, May all of you be well and happy. And for those who have departed, we will now transfer merits. Even if they are not biological relatives, they are related to this problem, so they are relatives in a relative sense. So we can now transfer merits to the departed ones. Idamme nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idamme nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idamme nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Sadhu.
So thank you, Reverend sir. So, and to all the listeners, we had I think close to 82 listeners this evening, viewers this evening, and I'm sure there will be many more tomorrow after the broadcast is back on live in our Facebook page. So let me take this opportunity to thank uh, Reverend Dato Dr. Sumana Siri, Nayaka Maha, for taking time off from his schedule, his busy schedule, really busy schedule, to share at least an hour of his time with us. And we look forward to many more sharings like this. Hopefully, we can do this soon uh, before Venerable Sir goes on his sojourn to Pakistan and elsewhere because he's a traveling monk. So, Venerable Sir, thank you so much again. We really
It's my
appreciate your time.
moral duty and pleasure. Thank you very much. Good night.
Sir, good night. Good night, everyone. Good night.